Yeah, so I don't wanna stress it with any intros or anything. Yeah, I feel like just diving in,
Okay.
and like I'm approaching this as, there's a mindset shift that I needed to make recently. More kind of like a reminder. Now that I have became somewhat of a pro in one thing in my life, call it, tech startups or building, you start fearing starting over in different fields. Like when I think of content creation or, podcasting or whatever it is, I'm a newbie. Realistically speaking, I'm a newbie. I don't know anything about it. And because my ego is inflated in another area of life, I feel like, oh, I can't, just embarrass myself and post like a crappy podcast video or like, but that's bullshit. Like I should be able to just be a newbie.
Yeah. And I think this is the danger with having a positive self-image, is that you start defending it out of from experiences that may prove to you that you do not have that positive self-image, or you're not an expert in this field. I feel like a newbie, so I don't want to have that experience.
Exactly. So I avoid entering into new areas because I don't want to face the disappointment or whatever it is of being a newbie
you
or
lose,
failure.
Your sense of identity. Because you've identified so much with what you're an expert in, you feel like you're not yourself in that new environment.
Interesting. Fascinating. Yeah. You take yourself maybe seriously because you're an expert somewhere, so you don't want to just like, I don't know, bump around the walls in a different field.
Yeah.
But that's so limiting. That's so annoying. Like I love learning.
Yeah.
And I want to give myself the chance to just mess around.
Yeah.
Muck around like.
So the intention behind the podcast is for you to venture into media.
It's not the intention. It's like a no. Like what I mentioned is I don't want to overcomplicate or overthink how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I just want to be playful. I want to let's start action. Let's go.
Okay.
If it comes out amazingly well, great. If not, I'll watch it and I'll learn.
Okay.
And the next one, so like this concept of like the 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Did I had my 10,000 hours in building tech startups. So now I have that status of like, I feel like I know a thing or two about it. I didn't have my 10,000 hours in podcasting or drawing or playing the piano or whatever it is. So instead of like overcomplicating it and thinking of like the strategies and the plans, because that's the kind of stuff you think about when you're an expert at something, I should just do it.
Yeah.
Nike slogan, just do it.
Yeah. I actually have a couple of questions. Now I became
Dude.
the interviewer. First, the theme that you picked for the podcast is obsession?
Yes.
Okay. So why did you pick that theme?
Amazing. I think it should be the other way around, but I'll let it pass this time.
I have another question as well.
Actually, I just had a couple of interviews today. I have lots of interviews in my every week, and to switch things up, I actually tell people, you know what? You ask the questions at the beginning, and then I'm going to ask you my questions. Okay. I'm going to give you two questions.
From the beginning.
Yeah. And it's like, people get confused. They're like, wait, what? I'm here ready to answer questions, not ask questions. But some people really appreciate it because it's like, sometimes it's very intimidating for someone to get into an interview, like a job interview. And as an employer, if you're in the employer's shoes, you're actually in the position of power technically, or you're the one who's deciding if this person is a fit or not. So I learned that it's actually much better for people you break the ice that way. They're like, oh, really? I can, I can ask questions. Maybe it comes from like school where teachers were like the figures of authority, and it's just too much. I think we should just anyway. So I'm happy, fine with you asking questions. Is the point. Obsession. So I am obsessed. I realize that I am obsessed with a few things, but mainly I'm obsessed with building high impact products. Call them, tech solutions, consumer products, tech startups. I'm obsessed with building businesses, generally speaking, that solve a problem for a group of people. I just love it. I love the process. I love the, finding the problem, testing it, trying it, talking to customers, just getting the high of people using the product. the highs and lows, the ins and outs of the day to day. I love it. I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. I called it a state of immersion a while ago in a blog post. And the idea is I love it when I feel completely immersed in something, where I lose sense of time. To me, that's what obsession is. And you lose sense of time because maybe you feel like you're actually playing a game and you're obsessed with winning the game and fine-tuning the details and trying to just get everything sorted. So you just feel like you're playing. So you can do it for hours. And along the way, I've met people who I found also to be obsessed with different things. Sometimes they're obsessed with the same thing. Sometimes they're obsessed with different things. And I just find them fascinating. Like, how did you become obsessed? Like, what made you obsessed? I'm super curious also on the origin stories of like, why did people become as obsessed as they are? So yeah, like I wanted to have conversations with people who are obsessed in different walks of life, understand more about their obsession. Because when you're obsessed with something, you go into like depths in that area that nobody even imagines are possible.
Yeah.
Like I have a common friend that you know, who's obsessed with free diving, who like taught me things about how we breathe that I never even knew were like part of the human body and were capable. Like people who hold their breath for like 7 minutes plus 10 minutes sometimes.
Yeah.
People who go 100 meters below the sea surface and without any oxygen, and they come back up. Apparently it takes them like a second to go down. They can go down 1 meter per second. So theoretically, it takes them like, if you're going 120 meters down, it would take you like 2 minutes down, 2 minutes up. So that's 4 minutes total.
Oh, okay.
But like 100 something meters is like no joke. Anyway, so I love to meet people who are obsessed, and I love to learn from them. I love to just get to know their origin stories. I think there is some correlation between obsession and having a chip on the shoulder. So almost every obsession, this is where the origin story becomes interesting.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know why they're obsessed or don't know where that comes from. And I find myself to be more curious to find out the origin story than some people like care about their own story. But anyway, this is the concept. So I want to talk to people who are obsessed and get to know why they're obsessed and just share that obsession and hopefully inspire people along the way.
Okay. I had another question starting out, but I want to ask a follow-up question. Because whenever we talk about obsession, I feel like sometimes it comes with an element of shaming, because a lot of people don't like a person who's obsessed. And sometimes, because growing up, we had this expression when somebody enjoys something a lot, and like they want to express their enthusiasm about it, they're told, you're easily amused. Like, you need to get out more. Like, why are you so into this sort of interest? So I wanted to know, like, in choosing this topic, was there an element of wanting to connect with other people who are also obsessed, away from the people who would shame you for being obsessed? Is there an element to that? Or?
Yeah, so I think indirectly, first of all, to address the feeling people get when they hear the word obsessed or obsession, to me, I started saying it so often positively that it like the conventional wisdom around how obsession is a bad thing has dissipated for me.
Okay.
Like, I don't feel like it's a negative thing. But 100%, if I say obsession, like to my parents or to my like just people like randomly,
you need help.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh, you know,
that might be a nice intro to the podcast. My name is Ahmed Al-Rawi, and I'm obsessed.
Nice, I like it. Yeah, so I have 3 goals for the podcast, and I had to like be intentional about them and write them down because I had to.
Because you're obsessed.
Yeah.
About controlling, about winning this game.
Oh, I definitely am obsessed about control, and that's a problem. But sometimes it's helpful. But it's good to be intentional, I think. So I asked myself, why do I want to do this? Because I don't want to do it for a subconscious, ego-driven reason that does me no good down the line, or just because it feels good, or I want to and also sometimes like when you do something, like let's say you post on social media, and if you're not intentional about why you're posting, you might get lost with vanity metrics.
Yes.
We know what that means coming from the startup world.
Yeah.
That means like they're numbers that don't really matter to get you to the goal, but they seem good and they give you a bit of dopamine when you see them. So when I do this, I want it to not be like swayed by likes and subscriptions and like obsess over that negatively of like, oh, I didn't get enough. I don't want that.
So like to throw in another startup term, you want to have a North Star.
Let's not go there. Yeah, it's. I don't have a North Star. I don't have a metric, but I have 3 goals. No, I don't have a metric. I think so. I think at some point, to call myself out on this, I think if it goes well and I start getting into it, I will start becoming obsessed with winning.
Okay.
In the kind of sport of podcasting, whatever it is.
Okay.
But at the beginning, I don't want that pressure.
Getting into it. Yes. You have 3 goals. Okay.
Yeah.
And they are.
And those goals also help me reduce that pressure back to the whole like I'm a newbie. So how arrogant of me to want to win in a sport I've never played.
Yes. Okay.
So let me get the ball rolling, and then I'll see how it goes. The 3 goals are: 1, I want to learn and have fun. I love learning, and I have fun having such high-level conversations, and I want to have more of them. Number 2 is I want to get to know more like-minded people, and that touches on the point that you mentioned earlier. I love it when I meet people who are obsessed about something, and I don't meet enough of them. I don't have enough of them in my social circle, and I want to grow that. It's a selfish reason. All of the reasons are selfish. The third one is I want to have impact, and that sounds,
that's
wishy-washy.
Not selfish.
I think even
selfish-ish.
that, yeah. I mean, even that kind of, because I feel good when I have impact. So it's, but like, I do, like, yeah. Let's just call a spade a spade. I feel good when I have impact. But with the impact thing, that's where you can get grandiose and very ambitious. I don't want that. My goal is I want just, if one person listens to an episode and finds it useful or inspiring or whatever, that's enough for me. So that way I limit my expectations. So if I have 10 views and one person goes like, I like this, or this really helped me, done. I'm done for that. That gives me the excitement to do another episode. These are the 3 reasons I'm doing it.
Okay, very nice.
You gave me an amazing intro, by the way. Like I wasn't intending on sharing the concept behind I love it. Thank you.
My pleasure. But actually, going back to the idea of selfishness, you have the books by Ayn Rand, and she has a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. So she talks about how we've sort of villainized the idea of being selfish to the point that taking care of yourself or just admitting that this thing brings me joy, you feel guilty about it. So in anything good we pursue, I think there's an element of selfishness that's healthy. Like you want to contribute to other people's lives, but you also want to gain something out of it in return. And it's not a bad thing. It is a good thing.
Yeah. If anything, like a bit of healthy selfishness is really healthy. Yeah, really important.
Yeah, because the thing is now the association with selfishness. When you say selfishness, it's your well-being at the expense of other people.
Yes.
And it's always that case. Like whenever you pursue something that is to your well-being and it's not at anyone's cost, you still feel guilty about it. It has to be for someone else.
That's deep. That's another vilified word, like obsession.
Yes.
Obsession and selfishness.
Yeah, definitely.
They have a bad rap.
Yeah.
They're good. They're good things.
Yes. Yeah. And this is why we need to kind of dissect some of the meanings or the concepts we've associated to the words that we commonly use.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Deep. You had a second question.
Yes. Because you mentioned being playful. You mentioned 2 things. You're an expert in tech startups.
Sounds cringy to say that. So I know a thing or two about tech startups.
I'm saying you're an expert. You said you're an expert at tech startups. But when it comes to trying out something new, you want to be playful with the new thing.
Yeah.
And my question is, have you tried being playful with the thing that you're an expert in?
Ooh.
Because maybe that, like, you've become serious about this thing that you're good at, and maybe that makes you a bit rigid. It makes you sort of limited in what you're able to explore within this area.
I love that. That's such a great question. So the reason why I said, I'll answer it, but the reason why I said playful with the new stuff is not because I want to be playful. It's because I think that's the best way, probably the only way, to actually genuinely get to know an area. Like, if you want to get to know how to play, I don't know, football or tennis or whatever it is as a child, you just be playful. You take the ball, you'd swing, you hit it a few times, and then you'd figure it out with time. And we have this amazing, beautiful capability to learn as human beings by trial and error. But as we grow older, we don't let ourselves be playful because we judge ourselves. Like, yeah, but like you look quite badly, you look quite bad doing this. You look like a noob. Like, you know, it's you're embarrassing yourself. The average, you know, teenage kid putting together a TikTok video does it better than you.
Yes.
But it's like, who cares? Like, yes, I am a newbie in this and I'm fine. So playfulness, I think, is almost like a
entry point. Like, it's like the thing that opens the gate to new learning opportunities.
Correct. I think it's a requirement to learn new things without having too many boundaries or being too limited.
Yeah.
Now,
but so because the reason why I asked that question is that I feel like sometimes we limit or we distance opportunities to be playful in the things that we're good at when we shouldn't be. Like, if you introduce elements of play into the thing that you're already good at or serious about, it can get better results. So I wanted your thoughts on this.
Totally. Yeah, I love it. I totally agree. It's very relevant to what I'm going through now. Like, I got to a point where I feel sometimes that I'm not having as much fun doing what I'm doing than I did before, compared to how I did before.
Yeah.
And maybe the reason is because I lost that playfulness. So I totally see that this can go really deep. I think it can apply on any field, but in my field in particular, because it has a bit of creativity, I think actually it does apply to every field. But like, when you think of it, in order for you to get better at anything, you need to be playful. But then when you get better, or when you become good, whatever that status is, if you stop becoming playful, are you still going to grow or improve or you know, get to the next level? Yeah. What you're saying is, don't you think that a bit more playfulness at that level is also going to get you to level up, more or less, or achieve, like, get to new?
I do believe in that. Yeah.
I totally see that as well. And what is being playful? It's probably like not taking yourself seriously enough or too seriously.
I don't recall who said it, but somebody said, you don't need to be serious, you need to be sincere. Like, it's something, because you can be playful while also really caring about the thing that you're doing. So I think that distinction is also useful.
Yeah, I don't think that quote sounds extremely profound, but when you explain it makes sense.
No, I have the mic. So with this mic, it's really profound.
Right. Anything you say with a mic gives you a lot of authority. Right.
Definitely.
Amazing. Cool. So thank you for switching places for a few minutes. I think this was a great introduction to the podcast.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So yeah, I decided, I was thinking like, what questions do I ask? How do I structure it? And I was like, fuck it. I'll just do it. You know, I'll go free flow. I'll just ask a couple of questions. We can speak for hours. So I think in this context, or in this case in particular, I'm not concerned. If anything, I think actually generally speaking, with anyone, having a free flow conversation in my book is better. It's like more going with the flow, more genuine, just finding what's interesting, going like, just following the inspiration, there's a bit of intentionality about the topic and a bit of intentionality around a couple of questions I want to ask. But it's just going to be story after story and then digging deeper and so on. So I want to start on a light note with although like we've already started, but on a, very light icebreaker question, which is, what painful experience would you recommend to everyone?
Very light. What painful experience? I don't think there's a specific painful experience I would recommend.
Okay, but maybe to make it lighter, what difficult experience would you recommend to everyone?
Even this, because it relates to the idea of being playful regardless of the circumstances. And this is something that I believe in. Not only being playful, it's about also, like, this is something I strongly believe in, which is you never need to escape your comfort zone. A lot of personal development advice is like, no, like the magic exists outside your comfort zone, and you need to sort of will yourself to be able to escape that comfort zone and so on. But for me, I think if you're making the decision, you can avoid difficult things. Life will occasionally throw difficult things at you, okay? And that's something you can't control. But the decisions you can make, you don't need to actually push yourself outside your comfort zone. You should move yourself to the edge of your comfort zone. And then once you start making progress with that, your comfort zone is going to expand. And as you continue, you'll see greater progress and you'll see better results. And the reason why I care about this so much is because a lot of people put their dreams on hold, and they actually don't get started because they tell themselves, I'm not ready. What I am saying is you're always ready. You're ready already. As long as you choose the thing that you're able to do, that gives you a bit of progress. And when you do that, you start building the confidence to then crave the things that are difficult, because you feel everything else is not easy, it's too easy. And you're seeking something that's more challenging.
I love that we found something that we disagree on already.
Yeah, I had to throw that in because I know it pushes all your buttons.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm glad you know me. You know me well enough.
Yeah.
No, listen. I think we definitely think slightly differently on a few topics, maybe more than slightly on some topics. But I think we share a lot of similar values. And if anything, I learn a lot from how you think, and I hope like I can also convey a thing or two from how I think. And I'd love to actually dig deeper there and talk, understand that a bit better. But you avoided my question, so we'll go back to that, and then we'll dive into your philosophy.
Yeah.
What is a difficult experience that you would recommend to everyone? Even if it's on the edge of the comfort zone, not all the way.
I answered your question by saying I don't think there is one. One, for example, like two difficult experiences I had was like losing a friend, and I don't wish that on anyone, and having panic attacks, like a panic attack, which was really severe. And the days following, I felt the world is gloomy and it can never be a happy place. This is how I felt about the world. And I felt a sense of despair because it wasn't something I'm able to control. Like how can I change what reality is? You know, it's as if I discovered something that I can now no longer look away from. But thankfully, so to me, the panic attack specifically was like, I see it more of a blessing than a curse, because it made me realize the things that I wasn't paying attention to. It allowed me to look deeper into healing modalities, better understand myself. I had a lot of emotions that I was suppressing, and I didn't realize I was suppressing, because like the exposure to or the experience of the panic attack led me to dig deeper into my emotions.
That just got dark really quickly.
You asked for it.
No, I appreciate it. Okay.
But I would also say, like, right now I'm way happier than I was before the panic attack.
Got it. So what did you learn from that experience?
I learned that reality is a simulation, because what I believed reality was, it wasn't. It was just me projecting onto reality what I thought it was. And I was saying, reality, like the world can never be a happy place. I didn't say I can't be happy. The world itself is not a place where I can be happy.
And that's what was getting you into the vicious cycle of like they got you to the panic attack eventually?
No, this was after the panic attack. Actually, I didn't realize what caused the panic attack. I thought it was a heart issue. And I was rushed to hospital. They checked my vitals. They're like, everything's is fine. They actually told me a couple of things. They said it's a panic attack, so don't panic. I'm like, yeah, thank you. That's one thing. And then the other thing, they made me look into sleep apnea. And that was like a whole journey of sort of discovering what it is, how to overcome it, and so on.
Fascinating. The reason why I love this question is because a lot of us have gone through difficult and painful experiences that have taught us a lot. Yeah. And sure, like in reality, I wouldn't wish any difficult or painful experience on anyone. But at the same time, there are difficult experiences that actually I think are very beneficial to go through. So some of the typical answers I would get in, like, I ask this in every interview, by the way, like job interviews as well, yeah. Some people cry sometimes, but most of the time it generates good results, good answers. And they leave the interview, they're like, this was really reflective, thank you. They feel like they left therapy. Yeah. But some of the common answers I get is study abroad. Because that's a painful experience because you have to live alone, difficult. You have to, you have your back against the wall, you have to figure everything out on your own. Your family's no longer with you. So it's difficult and painful, but like you can actually recommend it to someone. The way I think of this is, I'm a fan of Stoic philosophy and I'm a fan of Seneca. And Seneca actually would go as far as to say, like, in different words, I wish you suffering, because, and to those he loves, because
he's learn sadistic.
No, because he would learn from the experience. So a different thing he says is, be deaf to those who love you the most. They wish you bad things with good intentions. So those who love you wish you comfort and you never have to face any trouble in your life. Those are bad things. They wish them with good intentions, but they're bad things.
Okay. I think the reason why I struggle with this question is because even if I've had negative experiences, because I was in Kuwait during the Gulf War, we had to leave Kuwait, I think 2 weeks into the Gulf War. That was sort of an experience that sort of ingrained in me a few traumas.
Terrible.
But there's a saying, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And this is something that I kind of practice. Like, whatever difficulty I went through, I no longer, at least consciously, I don't sense the pain of that experience. Even the panic attack. I can't recall how difficult that experience was, because I kind of tried to heal out of it. So it doesn't register as a difficulty now. It feels like something I just went through,
Yeah, amazing. Going back to your other point, and then I want to move forward to my main course of a question.
Yeah.
Going back to the
comfort zone?
Yes. Okay. Like you're not a proponent of getting out of the comfort zone. You'd rather inch towards the borders, the inner borders of your comfort zone, and gradually expand outside or expand your comfort zone.
Yes.
Can you explain that, and why do you think that is better than, just going, jumping in the deep end, jumping into an ice bath, launching yourself way out of your comfort zone, which is something a lot of people are maybe a lot of people propose that people get out of their comfort zone regularly.
I'll mention a couple of things. If you're willing to jump into an ice bath, and you're there and you're going to do it, I wouldn't stop you. Go ahead, have that experience, because these extreme experiences can actually change your perspective, and then that experience in itself can give you the confidence to try other things, which is great, and I have nothing against it. But if you have that experience and then you don't wish to repeat that experience, that means you've made a negative association to something that could have been healthy for you and something that's enjoyable. Okay? So building up to that experience, you will approach it with greater confidence that allows you to actually enjoy the ice bath.
So just to use an analogous example here, what you're saying is, let's say there are 10 levels of someone who goes to the gym, and day one is carrying the barbell with no weights and doing super light exercises just to ease into it. You're saying don't jump to level 4 where you're carrying like 10 pounds on each arm, and just go and do the advanced thing from the beginning, because that experience will deter you and will make you think you don't like weightlifting or
exactly.
Right?
Because if you're able to associate joy with that experience, it becomes sustainable. It's not something that you experience any resistance towards. So the thing that I keep in mind, I don't want to experience resistance, reluctance, or resentment. This is like what my approach
sounds like
advocates.
A consultant framework of like, these are the 3 things you don't want.
Buy my book. No. But this is like I actually think a lot in terms of frameworks. I navigate life with frameworks. It's in my like X bio. I like exploring frameworks or something like
nice.
That. Yeah.
The framework guy.
Yes, and I love alliterations. So anything that like with a repeated letter. Nice. That's why I like blend of balance. These are
no need to do shout outs yet.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
So
that's one thing. So
we don't disagree on this point.
Okay. So one thing is not associating a negative emotion to the thing that you want to do consistently. That's one thing. The other thing, a lot of people are putting their ambitions on hold, like I said, because they don't feel ready. So, and the more you say, oh, you need to take the big leap, you need to take this, it actually is intimidating, and it increases the sense of intimidation.
Sure, it goes back to the playfulness point I mentioned earlier. I didn't want to take a big leap with podcasts. I just wanted to let's shoot the shit, have a conversation. If it's good, great.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So again,
that's generally the approach I take.
We don't sound like we're in a disagreement. That being said, you are saying, like those who say go out of your comfort zone. I don't think you should go out of your comfort. You're basically.
I'm attacking the other approach.
Yeah. So you have a problem with the statement. You have a problem with the cliche, but in reality, you're saying, go to the edge of your comfort zone, which is practically the same thing as saying, cross the border, just cross the line of your comfort zone and just do one thing. I don't think people should.
Sorry, there is a difference. Because what I'm saying is whatever you've chosen to commit to needs to feel comfortable.
That's what I wouldn't disagree with.
You wouldn't?
So I think you need to do hard things even when they don't feel great. And I think when you conquer hard things that don't feel great, you then feel great.
Okay. What I'm suggesting is a ramp to that state, which is when you start to desire hard things, you can build up to that. But many people have not built up to that, so they constantly live in a sense of not living to their potential, not going after what they want, because they made this other thing so intimidating.
So what both of us would tell such person is, if you want to start your journey in fitness, do 1 push-up.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, but the difference is, I'm saying the 1 push-up is uncomfortable, and you have to accept that you're doing an uncomfortable thing and just do it.
Okay.
You wouldn't say that. What would you say?
I would say, if the 1 push-up is uncomfortable, would you be willing? So it's an invitation, and the person has to determine whether they're comfortable with it or not. Would you be willing to do 1 wall push-up? Can you do a push-up on the wall? Okay. Most likely, that's super easy. They can't say no to it. So I would start with that. Maybe nudge them a bit more, to say, okay, is the 1 wall push-up too comfortable? Would you be comfortable with 5 wall push-ups? 10? I try to push them even further, but it has to be the entry point has to be something that they're willing to do. And because one of the things that I do not believe in, this idea of there are two wolves inside you, like battling. Anything that suggests there's inner chaos is not something I believe in. I think that's not a healthy state. You can actually cultivate inner harmony and be able to pursue the things you want to pursue without any resistance.
Fascinating.
But again, you build up to that, because maybe initially, actually you don't want to do any push-ups at all because you don't care about yourself.
Right.
Right. And in that state, sometimes you actually want to give that person a bit of space to at least recognize that emotion or that sentiment and give it space before you push against it. Because when you push against it, usually the person becomes defensive. That part of them becomes defensive and would cling more to that idea. But when you tell them, you actually have every right to feel that. Why do you think you feel this way? Are you willing to explore it? And then you're able to address the inner conflict.
Extremely different schools of thought.
Yeah.
I'll be like, 10 push-ups now.
Yeah. But then this might perpetuate the inner conflict.
Yeah.
You can get results. For me, the way I see it, you can pursue your ambitions, and like I think of it as clean fuel, okay? Which is based on, or it comes from a place of you loving yourself, caring about yourself, having the willingness to do something. You're not experiencing any resistance. But then the dirty fuel is the motivation that comes from insecurity or a chip on your shoulder.
I love that you said that. So the way I think of it now is I think different styles work for different people. I think of my style now as the tough coach style. And I don't know what you would call your style, but it definitely is...
Soft coach.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that word, but thank you. Okay. So probably that works for probably more people than the tough coach thing works for. Actually, I don't know about that, but entertain me. Some people would say, that's nice to think of, Haider, that I have the luxury of, wanting to love myself into getting to my job or starting a business or getting off my butt and working out. But my back is against the wall. I'm broke.
Yeah.
I have nobody to support me. If I don't do this, I starve. So for a lot of people, they don't have and I don't want to play the privilege card, but there's an element of, there's truth to it. A lot of people don't have the privilege of going the soft coach route. How would you address that?
Okay. Regardless of your circumstances, your circumstances may be difficult. And like I said before, sometimes you don't control what life throws at you. And you do want to be able to handle a difficult situation when it arises. But you do not have to contain that conflict within yourself. Because the soft coach route, it may be a slow start to begin with, but then you're able to accelerate when you remove the tension and the resistance that you're experiencing. You actually want to do the things. You want to work on that business. You want to take care of your health and so on. So you don't want that inner critic, the voice within you, to speak against you. And you don't want it to shame you. You don't want it. You actually want that voice to be supportive.
Got it. I'd love to. We'll come back to this, but I think we went deep into this topic. What I wanted to ask is, what is your obsession? It already showed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to know, how would you define your obsession? I know, and I have an idea, and I can describe it in a certain way, but I'd love to hear, how would you describe it?
Okay.
What is your obsession?
Am I allowed to throw Uno reverse card and ask you, what do you think my obsession is?
Sure. I think your obsession is self-development through figuring out the mechanics in your mind and making sure they're working in a nice harmony without like too much friction or resistance is another word you use, but like you want your psyche to work as a well-oiled machine and at ease without too much effort. Maybe effort is not the right word, but without too much like friction and like, you know, damage and so on. Is that fair?
I would say that's part of it. My overarching obsession. I would say, or I consider myself to be a generalist. So I'm interested in lots of things. I want to let my curiosity sort of take free rein in pursuing whatever it is I'm interested in and want to understand. And my obsession for a really long time was to understand the world and like to know how the world works. Even before going to university, I had this like existential crisis of trying to understand why am I a Muslim to begin with? How do we know what is true? I thought I personally figured out like a field of philosophy known as epistemology, like the science of knowledge. How do we know what is true? So I became obsessed with this from an early age. And what ended up happening is that I became obsessed with navigating the world mentally. So there were so many things, and I recall many years of my life where I actually forgot I had a body. Like I was so into observing the world, making sense of it, that I feel like I didn't live it. I'm not doing the things that would get me the results I want. I just figured out what the blueprint would be to get that result. So it became sort of a mental obsession with understanding the world. And then with that, I sort of looked into different approaches to psychology, understanding emotions. Like for a long time, I thought of negative emotions as negative, a bad thing. But then when you look into it, you realize everything within the human body is sort of geared towards our well-being, even pain. Pain is not negative. Injury is a bad thing, but pain is trying to help you sort of take care of yourself. And to, it signals that a part of your body needs attention and it needs to be taken care of.
Which is good for your health because you're going to take
exactly.
care of it.
And the same is true of negative emotions. Negative emotions in and of themselves are not a bad thing. They may be sort of misconfigured. So you're experiencing a negative emotion to an intensity that does not serve you, or in a situation that does not serve you. There was a X post that I saw. Somebody was like, I wish my nervous system would realize that I just have to write an email and I'm not being like chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Because sometimes that sort of reaction we have towards something is much more intense, or the perceived threat is much higher than the real threat. But that realization made me realize that negative emotions are positive emotions. And then when I looked more into habit building and like what actually works, I think the book Mini Habits was the first one that made me realize I don't need to start with really high motivation in order to make changes in my life. It can be low motivation, but low sort of a low target. And once I get started with that and build momentum, I'm able to pursue greater things. So it's the obsession was understanding reality, understanding human nature, and then personally, from my perspective, through some realizations, I sort of reached the conclusion that there doesn't need to be any inherent sort of resistance or conflict that we need to live with.
Explain that last part a bit more. There doesn't need to be any inherent conflict.
Because there are many people who assume that you have to push through the resistance that you experience internally.
Got it.
Like, why do you need high motivation? Because there's something inside you that's holding you back. And I feel like that something inside you comes from a good place. And if you have a conversation with it, you're able to actually overcome it. Like, it's going to dissipate. You don't need to push against the resistance. You need to give it a hug.
Fascinating. Yeah. I'd love to pick on this a bit more.
I'll give you an incident that happened. So I did a group session where I introduced internal family systems therapy, which talks a lot about us having parts, and these parts have their own convictions, and emotions that they resort to.
You have to properly explain this, because I think when you say internal family systems, the first time I heard it, I was like, what the hell is that? So what is that?
Internal family systems, if anyone has seen, or if you've seen Inside Out, it's based on internal family systems therapy. And it's the idea that we have parts to us that are like characters, okay, within us. Each part has its own convictions. That's your internal family. The collection of characters you have within you is your internal family. And
give an example.
So, if let's say you want to study abroad, a part of you is going to think this is exciting. It's a new opportunity. It's a way for me to express my individuality, to explore myself, and so on. Another part of you is really scared of the experience, and it might identify. The part itself might be a child part, and it does not feel ready to go out in the world. And so you sense this conflict between two characters with different convictions, and that can hold you back. Like, you're excited about it, and this is why the internal family systems uses the expression part, because when we talk about these inner conflicts, we usually say a part of me thinks, a part of me feels. So it's actually in alignment to something that we instinctively refer to. And there's a lot more to internal family systems.
So we're giving a group session.
Yes. I gave an introduction about internal family systems, and then I invited people to consider or to mention an emotion that they were struggling with. So some people said anger, frustration, boredom, a few like common negative emotions. And then I asked, anxiety was a big one as well. Then I asked the attendees, are you willing, can you sort of identify that emotion that you're struggling with? And I want you to imagine you giving that negative emotion a hug. Okay? I gave them a minute or two. And then somebody in the audience, she said, I actually refuse to give it a hug. And I'm like, why is that? She said, anxiety has ruined my life on a number of occasions. I can't show it love. So I said, this is fine. Do you sense that there's a part of you resisting giving anxiety a hug? She said, yes. I said, okay, is that part, do you sense that it comes from a place of strength or weakness? The one that's resisting giving the anxiety a hug. She's like, a place of strength. So I said, by the way, the anxiety is afraid, okay? It comes from a position of weakness. Can the strong part of you now reassure the anxious part that you don't need to be afraid? I'm going to support you in whatever it is that, in whatever situation that you are resorting to anxiety, I can help you through it. You don't need to resort to that to anxiety. Are you okay with this? Is the strong part in you okay with this? She's like, yes. I'm like, give it a minute and then let me know how you feel. So I continued with the session, and then she started laughing all of a sudden, and I was surprised. I'm like, did I say something funny? Like, do I look weird? Did I? And then she said, can it really be this easy? Because she no longer felt the anxiety. One part of her reassured the other part, and now it no longer needs to resort to anxiety. So this is how it can work.
Amazing. So zooming out, I feel like we went a few layers deep. What's your obsession? You kind of you mentioned epistemology or curiosity or like
understanding the
knowledge.
world. My obsession was understanding the
Beautiful.
world.
So your obsession was understanding the world, and then as a next step of understanding the world, you started understanding human psychology and how we operate and so on. And this is how or why you developed the conviction that you can live without conflict with yourself, and you can, maybe, I don't know, hug your problems. However, I'm saying it in a lot less fancy of a way than you did.
Not hug your problems. Hug the part of you that is responding to problems in a way that's not that helpful.
Yeah, potato. I'm kidding.
No, because there's an issue that we're facing, and there's our response to that issue, which is very Stoic as well. Like the circumstance that you're afraid of, and your judgment of that.
Right, yeah. 100%. Amazing. Okay, so fascinating. How, tell me more about your obsession, and how does it take over you? Like you mentioned at some point, you were so obsessed with learning that you just didn't even live, like you were just thinking all the time. Yeah. How does it take over? And maybe give a recent example or an example in the past. And how does it, does inspiration ensue and you start researching and reading and you can't stop? How does it work?
Yeah. And I think I'm like 99.9% sure that I have ADHD. And with ADHD, a lot of people think that a person with ADHD cannot focus, okay? But it's actually attention dysregulation. So at times, you're easily distracted, and other times you have something that's called hyperfocus. So you lose track of time. You maybe tune out noises around you. Like in some situations where I'm sort of processing a thought or trying to answer a question I posed to myself, because you mentioned like reading and learning, that's part of the learning process. A big part of it is also processing that information, trying to connect it to what you already know. What are the aspects of it that you've not sort of there are either holes or fragments in your thinking that you've not addressed. So sometimes I would just sit and try to process these things, and when people are around me, I tune them out. Like I actually don't listen to what they say.
Fascinating. So walk me through it again. Okay, so by the way,
a lot of it is to do with I prompt my mind with a question, and I still do this. Like when I journal or when I want to plan, I ask myself a question. I write it out. So usually it begins with a question that I try to find answers to.
What's an example of a question?
This is something I remember from my university days. I studied in London. I was exposed to different ideologies and different worldviews. So one question I asked myself is communism what makes communism good or bad? Okay, I was trying to understand communism as an ideology, and then as I answer, I try to acknowledge to what extent I'm filtering out certain ideas, because maybe I've already assumed that communism is a bad thing based on my existing beliefs. So am I willing to reconsider my own beliefs? If I was not a Muslim, how would I see this objectively? And then as a Muslim, why do I see it this way? And can that also be objective?
So I know that you journal a lot. Is that how you think? Like you type a question and then you go about answering it by typing your thoughts?
It depends. So sometimes typing, sometimes I have to resort to paper. Sometimes it's doodling, like drawing a box and then connecting it to another box, like just a visual way to represent connections between ideas, ways ideas relate to each other, and so on. And sometimes it's just sitting down and zoning out, because I've asked myself a question and then I'm exploring what the answers might be.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Where has your obsession taken you?
For the most part, I think I'm a clear thinker and communicator because I've explored my own thinking well enough to identify where the gaps are. And actually, like some opportunities came my way. Like somebody would ask me for advice about something I've never spoken about. Like they want career advice because they're considering doing like a PhD. I'm like, okay, why did you pick me? Like I've never talked about this. But they sense a clarity in thinking or in communicating, and they want to experience that for the issue that they're struggling with. And because my obsession is like a generalist obsession, so it's not a single topic that I've obsessed about. I connect different topics to each other. Even in business, somebody would ask me about like they're having an operational challenge, and I'm like, your issue is not operational. It's actually like in another department. Or your biggest opportunity, because they come to me for user experience design advice. I'm like, you're not getting traffic to your product. Like, how can you address the marketing issue or branding issue and so on?
What's the most fascinating thing you've learned about humans and how we operate from that, obsession you've had with how we think and how we behave? Or one of the most fascinating things?
A question I still sort of struggle with, or I'm still exploring, is how do we define human nature to begin with? Because even especially coming from like a religious background, I was approaching things from the lens of religion or having been heavily influenced by religion. A lot of Muslims say Islam as a religion is compatible to human nature. But I never understood like what's the definition of human nature. And a lot of the people who make this claim are defining human nature based on their understanding of Islam. So the definition of human nature has to be objective enough that when you compare it to a religion, like you're doing it fairly and objectively. You cannot define human nature within. Because I've had discussions with Christians and they say, like at the core of the human experience is guilt, and this is why we believe in original sin. So to them, Christianity is compatible to human nature. So I'm still exploring what human nature actually means.
Fascinating. You broke all the rules of the first episode. You spoke about religion. I feel like you're about to speak about politics. I forgot to give you the ground rules, but I still feel like going back to the whole comfort zone thing.
Yeah, no, I want to go back to because you mentioned something about achieving success and having a chip on your shoulder. Can you talk a bit about that? Like, do you feel I'll ask two questions. Do you feel every successful person has had a chip on their shoulder in order to achieve success? And is it possible to achieve success from a place of sort of wholesomeness, joy, play, creativity, the good stuff? Can you achieve success through that?
Fascinating. Great question. I think, first of all, I want to preface my answer with every rule has its exceptions. So I cannot say every successful person has had a chip on their shoulder. That being said, every successful person has a chip on their shoulder.
Every rule has an exception.
Except for this one. Yeah. No, I don't want to generalize too much, but I do believe that majority...
But in general,
yeah. No offense, but... I think most successful people have had a chip on their shoulder. I think how you define the chip on the shoulder is what matters. I think, to me, the way I look at a chip on the shoulder is maybe some people would call it, I don't know, like some people would look at it as a traumatizing event that happened to them that made them behave a certain way. I don't necessarily look at it that way. That might have something to do with it, But to me, a chip on the shoulder is a desire to prove oneself. I want to prove myself to my parents, to my neighborhood, to my school, to the world, to my country, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's this desire, and it stems essentially from an insecurity of feeling like you're not enough. Like I want to, in the sense of like competitiveness, and like I want to like do big things and great things, and I want to become wealthy, and I want to win at every. So it comes from a sense of insecurity, because if you're secure, if you're satisfied with where you are, you're not going to be pushing so hard. I think even artists, to an extent, like sometimes, sure, like you're led and driven and pulled by inspiration, perhaps. But I don't know. There's something that tells me that there's always, like, if you're really comfortable, then you don't have to do anything. But I also partly think that's death on earth. Like you can be living but not, you could be alive but not living. If you could be alive but not living. If you are just chilling, doing nothing, and you're just happy, you're satisfied. Don't get me wrong, it's probably the best type of existence. Like if you think of it, like, actually maybe not true. I do think that we've evolved to survive, obviously. And part of survival is suffering. So if you don't have random, healthy doses of suffering in your day-to-day, you suffer even more. Our body and our mind has been evolved and was, like, in a sense, it functions in a way where it benefits from small stressors and shockers. That's Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his book Anti-Fragile, talking about how, when you deadlift 100 kgs and your body is only used to deadlifting 80 kgs, you're sending a shock wave to your muscles, you're tearing your muscles, and then that sends information to your brain and to your body to, now I need to rebuild the muscles to handle not only 100 kgs but 110 and 20 kgs, because I need to have room for, I don't know when the next hit happens, it might be even harder, so I need to be ready for it. So I think from that concept, from nature, we thrive on a little bit of suffering, or on healthy doses of suffering. I also went on a tangent. I do believe that most people who, you have the term peaked in high school. Those are the people who had an amazing life in high school. They were the popular kids in school. They had everything they wanted. They end up not amounting to much in life. Why? Because they stopped growing, because they stopped working, because they're like, chill, dude, I'm doing great.
But I also feel like with that example specifically, it's because they optimize their lives for a specific game, and reality is not similar to that. Because those who excel academically, they know how to answer questions that have fixed answers.
People who peaked in high school are not those who excelled academically.
Okay. But even then, it's like they optimized for a game that exists in school, and it's not as easy to replicate outside of school.
Sure, but the point is, they didn't feel the need to participate in the game outside of the school later and work hard for it and so on, because they have this sense of, chill, man, I'm doing fine. But the kids who had a chip on their shoulder, the kids who had an insecurity and felt like, I'm not good enough, they pushed. And I'm not saying this is an amazing thing, or this is healthy, or this. Like, I'm yet to find out also, and I'm questioning, okay, I have a chip on my shoulder. Does that chip stay for the rest of my life? Do I manage to resolve it? What if I prove the thing that I want to prove to the world, to my family, to whoever? What happens then? I don't know. I don't know yet. And that's a topic that fascinates me as well. And I want to explore it more. Part of me doesn't want the spark to die. But at the same time, like, there is reality to a chip on the shoulder is also somewhat healthy, but depending on how it manifests, it might not be very healthy.
Yeah, but what you're saying is making me think about dopamine. So there's a great book called The Molecule of More. And it says, like, it starts off with anything that you can reach with your hands, okay? We would consider it the here and now system. And anything that requires some planning to get to, so anything that is off in the distance, you cannot reach with your hands, is the there and then. Dopamine, as a hormone that exists in our bodies, is meant to help us achieve the things that require multiple steps to reach. So, and it's part of us as human beings. We have a dopamine system. We should not neglect. The people who are always satisfied, they're focused purely on the here and now. But focusing purely on that, I would personally not consider it fully human, because there's a big part of you that you're completely neglecting. But also, when it comes to the dopamine system, we can approach it in a healthy way and in a not so healthy way. So if you're very ambitious, and like, let's say, people who train for a marathon, sometimes they experience depression straight after, because this is the thing that they were working towards, they were anticipating, and once it's over, the dopamine crashes in their system. For them to sort of pick it back up, they need to have something that's even more ambitious, because dopamine regulates based on what we're experiencing, and which is why our phones are addictive, because a hit of dopamine is no longer satisfying. We need a greater hit, and so on. But again, like the point is not to neglect this system, this part of ourselves. We should be ambitious. We should be seeking things out that we've not yet achieved. And even like when it comes to, you mentioned, you called it a struggle, like there has to be a daily struggle. I would personally think of it as a stressor, and stress is good. Like there's actually a cortisol spike. There should be a cortisol spike in the morning, and cortisol is like a stress hormone for you to wake up.
You said a few different things. I just want to how does it link to what I was saying on the chip on the shoulder?
The point that you said about pursuing things and like wanting to prove yourself, the dopamine system is like geared for that, geared for you to pursue things that you have not yet pursued, you have not yet achieved, for you to remain like motivated to pursue.
I understand that, but I feel like it's maybe like too much reductionism, or reducing the chip on the shoulder concept to dopamine. I think it's much farther than that. It's much bigger than that. It's about maybe social status and how you feel like, you're not desired, or, not useful, or whatever it is. And you really want to change that. And that's...
This is true. But Andrew Huberman says the base currency of all human life is dopamine. Like at the root of it.
Interesting.
If you're seeking success, relationships, there's an element of dopamine.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, I guess all of those things.
Physiologically, this is how it's functioning. Right. But of course, you would have your own reasons. So what I wanted to say, in response to what you mentioned, is that there is a natural and healthy dimension to this pursuit. Now, why you're pursuing it, whether it's feeling like you were neglected by your parents, you weren't the cool kid in school, whatever it may be, this sort of adds an additional element or some direction to our dopamine system, which, going back to the point I mentioned, there's clean fuel, dirty fuel. It means something that you pursue purely out of insecurity. I feel it may motivate you, but it's not clean fuel.
Yeah, I think a lot of things can start from the chip on the shoulder, or from maybe an insecurity, but then they don't continue to be. You don't continue to be fueled by the insecurity, the chip on the shoulder. Yeah. You start being more fueled on maybe the inspiration, or you get immersed, you become obsessed, and so on.
Yes, I agree.
Like, at times maybe, and this is, I think, a lot of people who are labeled as maybe very career-driven or like workaholics or whatever it is, they find work to be an escape. And then after a while, they're like, wait a minute, I'm enjoying this escape.
Yes.
Like it's actually, it pays off. Like I'm getting my dopamine because I'm achieving results and so on. And then they're no longer doing it because of the insecurity per se, but anyway, that's, maybe
that's right.
Besides the point. I want to actually pick on the clean fuel and dirty fuel.
Yeah.
Can you explain that concept a bit more?
The reason or the thing that motivates you can be insecurity or something that's negative you're trying to overcome, or it can be something positive that drives you towards. You may feel your life is great and you're grateful for what you have, but you also recognize the abundance in the world and what you can achieve. You do not need to be motivated by insecurity or proving other people wrong and so on. So this is what I would like. A positive drive is what I consider a clean fuel. A negative drive is what I consider dirty fuel. Fascinating.
So I'm a big fan of, affirmations that make you like expand your horizons and believe, like remove the negativity and believe that I am capable, the world is my oyster, there's abundance in the world, those kinds of maybe affirmations and statements. You just saw some of my affirmations written on the window.
Yeah.
But one could make the argument that such affirmations are built on top of the negative voices in the head, perhaps. So even the clean fuel is built on top of the dirty fuel in a sense. You know what I mean?
You mean like in response to?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. But not only that, even if there is an element of negativity, going back to internal family systems, you don't shame yourself for experiencing that thought. You show any thought or feeling respect. So, including insecurity. Like I don't mean, when I say dirty fuel, I don't mean it in a disparaging way and like we should dismiss it completely. But it's like an invitation to consider the possibility that you do not need insecurity to drive you. You can have something positive to drive you.
Is it fair to say that the default system of the human brain, maybe the archaic brain, is the dirty fuel, and we can learn to upgrade our thinking and our system to the clean fuel?
The things that the dirty fuel that drives many people is not a base fear. It's a complex relationship, complex interaction, expectation. So, for example, not being accepted in school, or it's not running away from a saber-toothed tiger. It's a bit more developed. It's a bit more complex, even though it is like fundamental to the human experience. We do want a sense of belonging, and not feeling like we belong can create some insecurity. But I don't feel like that's where we need to be. I do think there is an element of like, what's the word you used? Is it primordial? What the like very primal? Yeah, there might be an element to that, but I don't feel like. I think the primal has both elements. Like you can feel belonging. You can feel belonging, or you can feel like you don't belong, but still be okay with yourself in order to show up as your best self.
Do you think the most successful people in life, or do you think the most successful people in the world today operate on clean fuel or dirty fuel?
Dirty. But it's because in the same way that our energy is dirty to the environment, and we've not developed the sort of the clean energy that we need. We can experience a similar shift. And even if you look at corporations, for example, a lot of them don't have a healthy work environment. It's actually a toxic culture because they've seen what others have done, and they assume because other corporations have experienced success with a toxic environment or with a toxic work culture, we can do the same. Or some people think that the toxic work culture is what got other corporations to success. But I'm challenging this assumption.
Got it. So I think there's a world where we graduate into clean fuel technology for the brain.
Yes. Not only this, I'm unashamedly idealistic, and I think a lot of people who say they're realistic are cynical, and they don't recognize that the world is somewhat malleable. So they're dismissing possibilities because they want to perpetuate the status quo. And I think a lot of idealism is actually very realistic, and it is possible. The only thing that stands in the way is our beliefs.
It's because they're in their comfort zone.
In the center of the comfort zone. They should move to the edge.
Nice. Smooth. Can you, just for the sake of, I think we didn't explain it very well, give an example of what is like, if someone is operating on clean fuel versus dirty fuel, what's going on in their head?
Dirty fuel might sound like I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, I'm a piece of poop. Yeah. So this is what the self-talk is negative, and it's meant to push you towards doing more, trying harder. But you can actually say, I'm not good at this, but I'm willing to learn. And again, a lot of statements, we've attached labels to them as being negative or positive. Sometimes they're just fact, and if you accept it as fact without judgment, it's not negative. I'm not good at this doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. And it's sentiment. It's like negative sentence, but it doesn't have to elicit negative emotions. You can just acknowledge it as fact, and then you build on it. But dirty fuel is like being negative and harsh towards yourself and hoping this will motivate you to achieving great things.
And clean fuel is?
It's being positive, supportive.
Example?
I want to write a book and I'm struggling with it. I would say to myself, this may be challenging, but if you dedicate 2 hours a day to it, or if you approach it playfully, if you approach it with curiosity, you'll be able to make your way through the project and so on. It's a supportive a sort of form of communication.
Where do you want to be in 10 years?
I'm really driven by being given the opportunity to just explore my curiosities and my obsessions. And for me personally, because I teach, my day job is I teach at a community college, just having classes, having scheduled commitments make me feel like I'm not able to pursue my curiosities the way I want to. Like having an open schedule is sort of the ideal for me. So in 10 years, I might be sitting in a farmhouse and just exploring, doing reading, writing, exploring things, maybe traveling a lot more than I currently do.
Amazing. Perfect time to plug your books. You've written and published a couple of ebooks, I think, right?
Yes, I've written 4 books. And the thing is, I write about the topics that I want clarity on, and I develop a framework so that I can implement like my own advice. So I've written on life balance, productivity, building habits, and writing.
Amazing. My 3 subscribers will buy your books, hopefully. Awesome.
No problem.
Amazing. How was the experience?
Great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Should I do it again?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Good.
And maybe like with other guests, if you want to delve deeper, if they're like, that they specialize in something, and then get them to go deep in it.
100%.
Because I feel like maybe my obsession was a bit broad in terms of
I don't know. To me, it's very clear what your obsession is.
Okay.
I wonder how like the external listener might observe it, but you really are obsessed with understanding how the human like experience is, I guess, what it's about, and that goes like from psychology all the way to physiology. You were telling me about, I think a funny thing we say is sometimes you tell me about things and I dismiss them like, yeah, it sounds like, sure, like it's not that exciting. And then 2-3 years later I learn about them and I'm like, dude, this thing you told me about 2-3 years ago, like it seems like it's the
I'm
shit.
glad this part is being recorded. I need that testimonial.
Yeah. So more recently you told me about like the mitochondria and like how the cells function and so on, and it's fascinating where your curiosity takes you sometimes. I do get jealous that you have your classes that don't allow you to be curious all the time. I think I have maybe 2 or 3 times as many meetings as those classes that unfortunately have been preventing me from also following my curiosity. But it's always great to catch up and learn about what you've been learning about. So thank you for taking the time and flying here to make this happen. This was really fun.
Thank you for choosing me as your guinea pig.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, thank you. I think this went really well. It was very smooth. Just because I think we talk a lot and we can talk for hours. I think we could keep going, but the guys said they have 15 minutes of memory left. So
okay.
Cool. So thank you very much.
Thank you.